typically, most of the junior high investments they have reached that now. So,
Thank you. Can you do a roll call? Mr. Esposito?
here.
Mr. Hensley?
Here.
Mr. Turflinger?
Present.
Mr. Belkey?
Here.
Mr. Flock?
Here.
I'm here, Ruth Ayers, and Mr. Shaw is absent. Are there any emergency additions or deletions to the agenda?
Sorry. Yes, there is new 6.1 next level planning grant presentation to presentation 3.2.
Thank you. We'll begin with hearing of the patrons. Would anyone like to comment? Mr. South, are we having people come zoom in also? Is that?
I do not have anybody.
Okay. But it's an option, right?
I could restart the Zoom if I need to.
Okay, sounds good. All right, then we have two presentations. We're going to begin with the Heartland update. Brian and Pete.
DuPont.
Yeah.
So I'm pinch hitting for Mark Hobbs. He sends his apologies last minute. He has a family emergency, so he was not able to be here tonight. My name is Pete DuPont. I'm the supervisor of student services. This is Brian Evans. He is our internship coordinator, also our principal and marketing teacher. So we just wanted to give you a quick update. Mr. Turflinger has asked many times if we can come up and talk and be here, and you guys have been down to our facility. So we wanted to just kind of give you an update of things that are happening for your students. First, I need to note here, just as we interact with Manchester, a lot of people may not realize the interaction the Department has with Manchester, because I consider the part owners of what we do. Dave sits on our board, as every year we have a board member that sits on the board. Steve was a member of our board previously, and we had many members from Manchester High School being part of our board, so thanks to all those folks. As well, we work really close with your superintendent. Mr. Lowe is down a lot for superintendent meetings, your principal, Dr. Libby, Joey Mobley. I wrote down the people that I work with, Jody Metzner, and your new counselor, Joe Stoffel, extremely good to work with, very, very informed people, and really are doing a good job for you guys so far. And also wanted to make sure that I thank Mike Hensley. Mike has come down and done some lead six signature training course, so I want to make sure to say thank you to him as well. So with all of that being said, of course, thanks to Dave for the invite to come up. Just a summary of information. You guys kind of wonder what we do down there. We're separate from you, that we're down in Wabash, but we're together with you in terms of the overall accomplishments of the school. So your students are our students, and our students are your students. This year, just a quick, I don't know what order these are in, so I'm just kind of giving you the notes of what I have. We have this year a record number of students down in Heartland. There are over 600 students down there. This particular year, 73 of those students are Manchester students. That is an increase from last year, which was 63%. So you guys are just over 10% of the students that are down there, about 12% of the student body. Of course, we always encourage you to send more. That's always a unique challenge for you. But the difficulty for your counseling is how to get the 40 credits in that they need, and also then accomplish the vocational training as well. The things that you see up here are benchmarks that we have as a career center. So things that we look at every year that also come back as funding to Manchester High School. So the things that we're looking at are the college credits, the internships, certifications, and licenses. So those are the big pieces that we had. Last year obviously was a challenging year given the COVID situation, but I think we did pretty well in terms of the accomplishments that we had. I did the math in terms of your school. So in terms of your school, we had 2,979 college credits, 363 kids that earned credit through either ID type or Vincennes, and there's a breakdown of each one of those. So that's a lot of students getting that. I know if you do the math, it's about $170 a credit hour just for the tuition. I do know last year Manchester had, you saved over $70,000 for student tuition. Again, that's just the cost of the class. That doesn't include books and time and everything else. But you saved over $70,000 with your students. Last year you had 42 students earn college credits, over 400 college credits, so it's an incredible amount of college credits. We also look at internships. Last year, again, given COVID, normally the end of the year is when we get everybody out toward internships. The number increases a lot toward the end of the year. We still had 107 internships that included 103 students. 17 of those were Manchester students that went out and were about in the community as well. Most of those are paid internships, so unique opportunities for students down there as well. And then we look at the certifications and licenses. Last year we had 247 certifications and 36 licenses. So I broke that down. I looked at, okay, how does that affect Manchester? Manchester certifications and licenses last year, you had 19 students, so that would be senior or second year students. So 19 of those students walked away with 28 certifications and 5 licenses. And actually I was doing the math today, and that actually changed because over the summertime we had kids that went and got cosmetology license, so that makes 29. We had 3 kids get the Lean Six Sigma certification, so that makes 32 certifications that you're. We're hoping to make kids college ready and career ready. That's our goal. So everything that we do is based off of those type things. I also would tell you, I don't know that I should say certain new student names, but I can't help but say a couple. You have the first ever female CDL student. We did the CDL program. We had 7 kids successfully complete out of 8. The only reason the 8th person didn't was a hearing impairment that kept them from being able to get their license. But you have the only female student that got that, so that was pretty incredible. You had 4 students get their CNA licenses. You had a student last year, the only Manchester student in cosmetology, got her cosmetology license. You had 3 kids that got their green belt certification through Lean Six Sigma. So you had some pretty unique certifications there as well. Mark asked us to talk, and I don't know if you could go to the next slide, Randy. I think it's something on the seal. So this is a breakdown, and I'm assuming the board members get this breakdown. Dave, I'm assuming you give that to them. You get it? I'd be happy to make sure if you guys haven't looked at this, but what this does is this breaks down each school that we have. We sort of have 9 sending schools. This breaks down the number of students. So on this particular day, it says it's 602 students, I believe is what I see over here in the corner. We're right around the 600 mark of students. And again, this will point to you, 72 on here says 72, I believe it's 73 students from Manchester that are down there right now. So you could look at the breakdown per school, per program to know who's down there at the Career Center. And again, like I said, we're 70 kids over where we were this time last year, so it's a large number. This is what's called a State Earn and Learn program, and I brought Brian Evans to talk a little bit about it. We are always looking for internship opportunities. We're always looking for opportunities that connect not only the academic foundation that you guys have, but also the foundation that we have with the career side of things, the college credits that come along with it, the certifications. And the state is beginning to recognize those things and now connect this piece to employers. So Brian's going to talk a little bit about what the SEAL program involves, and if you would just tell them which programs right now are SEAL programs. I know you guys are also looking at SEAL programs as well, so I'll let Brian talk about that side.
Well, I'm by no means a SEAL expert because we just kind of started doing this last year, but basically the acronym State Earn and Learn. We have precision machining, precision ag, health science, and welding are our 4 SEAL programs. And from a community outlook, the one benefit that I see about the SEAL programs at Heartland is it makes the employers eligible to receive reimbursement funding for training, up to $5,000 per student and $100,000 cap per company. It's usually $50,000, but this year they doubled the amount that they were going to allow the employers to claim. Right now, we're 4 weeks into school. I have roughly 5 SEAL programs or SEAL students that are actually placed, and I've been working with those employers to fill out the paperwork. It's not like writing grants that you folks are probably used to writing. It's fairly easy. There's templates on the website. Once the students are in the program and they qualify, there's not a lot of information. I go out and assist the employers with writing their training, I'm going to call it a training grant. It's really a training application. Basically, once they're accepted in, then we write a work plan, a training agreement, and then when the students complete various sections of that agreement, then the employer can turn in an invoice, which again is a template off of their website, and receive reimbursement for that. So the value is the students, and I know Mrs. Leifer's here, and sometimes it's kind of hard to get students into certain opportunities with certain jobs or certain professions. If they're a SEAL member, the thing is that employer could essentially we're gonna say train or onboard or scout for new talent with actually little or no cost while paying the student as an intern. It kind of raises the bar a little bit, raises the quality, make sure there's a vested interest on both parts because they have to complete it to get the reimbursement. But essentially, it just makes it really appealing for an employer to take on a SEAL intern. So that's really all I can tell you about the SEAL program. A lot of this information is available on our website because we have these 4 programs. My second duty up here was to tackle Pete if he got going too long, but
I won't go too long, and you can just follow along. What it tells the kid is it tells the student in their first year what would they do, in their second year what would they do, and it's talking about certifications, classes they would take. It helps the student map out what their high school plan looks like, and then also it will go on, this particular one's a health science one, it will go on and tell them what type of jobs would be out there and available for them. We can try to help set them up for internships as well, and it actually connects, down at the bottom, connects all the academic courses a student would want to take if they want to get into that type of program. So that's what a SEAL program does. There's 4 of those. I don't know that each one you guys would be able to read that information and look at each information or each piece of information, but it includes the in-class training time, it includes the dual credits that come along with it, then it includes the work-based learning and how many hours a student could expect with that. So I only had a couple more notes on here. I wanted to make sure to say a couple things. First, for us, this is a really challenging year. I know that I've worked really well with your guidance folks, and they've done a great job. I think in the spring we were looking at almost 85 kids coming down to us. Some of that changed because of virtual education, so some of those kids have opted to totally go virtual, which is fine. That's a fine option. We also have about a dozen of those kids which are virtual that also come to us live. So that's an option where they come to us live. All of our classes, according to the state standards, they have to be face-to-face, 50% or more, or there's no funding that come with those classes. So Career Tech Ed's a little bit different than some of the other courses, but that's something to just consider. But we certainly accept virtual students. We have virtual students coming right now from all of the school settings, so you guys aren't in a unique spot with that. Every school deals with those kind of things. The other thing is I was going to say to Steve directly, Steve, I remember I've been on the board with you for 18 million years at Heartland when you were down there. You hounded us for a precision ag program. Get something in ag, go deeper, go. So what we did is we actually kind of highlighted that program and took it down to a state to look if we could pilot a program down there with precision ag. Lori Dubois was the gal that was putting it all together. She's a local person, she's a farmer. Went out to as many ag people as she could talk to about the program and to do those kind of things. This year is our first year to do that. It's a pilot program. We have 18 kids in that program this particular year. She's doing some really cool stuff. I went out the other day and watched them, and they were doing some drone training along the cornfields, and we're up over the cornfields, taking videos of the program. So just a really neat opportunity there. And then another thing that you might want to know about is the health science program. We were challenged. What if we have a kid that wants to take A&P and get the college credit for it, but doesn't want to do the CNA side? Could we do that? We've partnered with Ivy Tech. We're Ivy Tech now. We have 22 students that are just Ivy Tech students taking pre-nursing courses, and actually after a 2-year period can earn what's called a pre-nursing certification, 1 full year of college complete by the time they're done. And so there's 22 kids in that program. I believe Manchester has 3 of those 22 kids. They also have 3 in the CNA program, so you have 6 kids in that health science program, and that's been a really neat opportunity. And then the other thing that you guys will always hear about is early college. Vincenz is down there working with us on early college. Now Ivy Tech has jumped on board. They want to do early college programs as well. So a lot of our programs are wrapped around certifications and early college credits where students can earn a lot of college credits while they're there, accompanied with what you guys are doing with the English, math, communication, those kind of things, and they can work toward knocking off a lot of college credits while they're in high school. So great opportunity. So that's what I had. I didn't know if there's other information that you would like.
Real briefly, could you explain the funding that we get from the state and how it benefits Manchester Community Schools?
Yeah, maybe. Okay, so just, I'm not even going to pretend that I know exactly what I'm talking about. Because again, I'm a guidance person. So Mark is really the director, but the way I actually do have a funding sheet, I put it in my notes just in case you ask that question. Here's what happens for a CTE course. Is our CTE courses are 3 credit hours. Of the 3 credit hours, you're getting reimbursed by a state per diem per credit hour down at the state, the way I understand it. The low per diem on that is $200. The high per diem on that is $680. Most of our programs fall between the 400 and the 680 per credit hour for a student to be down there. So the way I understand the program, and actually a second-year student now, if they're retained in a program, that number goes up to 1,020. So if they stay a second year in the program, the money that comes back to your school is $1,000 a credit hour, which is incredible again, besides the other benefit that students are getting. The way I understand it, and again, I don't know the monetary figure, those are things that Mark talks with you guys about, but the way I understand it is per student, that's a reimbursement back to, I believe, Heartland, and then Heartland offsets a cost that would be given to you guys. So it brings your cost, if your cost was up here per student, that levels the cost out and brings the cost down. And that's the best I understand it. That's probably the most knowledge I should know about that, because that's really not my area of expertise. So I don't know if that helps, but that's the best I know.
So the second year for Precision Ag, if they're there for 3 hours, is over $3,000.
Yes. Yeah, and that offsets any kind of cost that go in toward your vocational type programming, so,
And that's per student that's there.
per student.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Or?
I do. Thank
Yes.
you both for coming to the meeting, number one. What's on the horizon for Heartland? You guys got any new programs? What I specifically want to focus on, we need to differentiate ourselves, right? We need to pull students in. I mean, this student count thing's kind of getting out of hand. I want you guys to think at Heartland, what's on the horizon that we can use? What can we do in our space with our kids to better prepare them for CTEs? And also, I'm looking at Mr. Smith sitting there, on the town council. We're missing a huge opportunity here to get these kids ready and to pull, not only to provide them jobs in the ortho space, but to be trying to pull these ortho companies, more and more of them, into Manchester. Where we've got labor shortage, there's huge labor shortage with a lot of companies right now. And I kind of want to know between our school system and Heartland, where is the space where we can get involved? I got a couple ideas, but I kind of want to hear it from you guys. How can we tap into this, both from a school system of increasing our enrollment, but also from a community of trying to draw, more businesses in? I'm one that, I got kids, they're flying around now, going to different places to live. I got grandchildren. I just as soon kind of be around them and have opportunities in our community for these people to stay in our community, young professionals, and work. So one thing I throw back to Heartland is great programs. We need to grow our enrollment down there. There's no doubt about it, right? I mean, 63 kids, we're kind of missing some opportunity, but I'd like people to start thinking about the future. What can we do together as a town council, as a school board, as Heartland, as Grow Wabash County? Some point we got to bring this thing together and start putting some targets out there to grow this community. I'm a little sick of hearing about, population going down. If we want to sit here and be victims to what's going on, that's fine, do that. But I think the main thing is we need to be looking together about how we can play together in this space and how we can take care of some of these opportunities of this labor shortage as a community, and grow this community. So,
Well, to answer the question, first I'm going to say, I don't know I'm not going to have some catastrophic answer that's going to just knock your socks off. I'm just not going to have it. One thing I would say from my end, to get more students down there, it's always advertising, just like you guys do with your programs. If students don't know about it, then they won't come. Okay? The other thing for me is we're in a partnership. I'm not against you. I am with you 1,000%. When people ask me what school I'm from, I'm Manchester, I'm North Miami, I'm Peru, I'm Wabash, I am you. Back in the 60s when it was started, the whole idea was, how do we train a workforce locally without someone else coming in to train that workforce with us? That was the whole concept of it. That's how Heartland started in 1965. And so the concept is, even though we're regionally in the same area, I'm not separate from you. I'm 20 minutes down the road. And we're doing the same thing. So as a matter of fact, we're talking to your internship people, your business people, your teachers about how do we connect, how do we have advisory. We have people on our advisory committees that are your advisory people, that are people that belong to your school. So it's getting the word out to say it's not the old Heartland that used to be. If you're gonna go to college, you stay at Manchester, and if you're gonna go on to a trade, you go to Heartland. We're offering as many college credits and as many opportunities for kids as you are. It's if I find a student and these things match, how do we do that? And then it is, as a board, just like what Steve did years ago. Steve, how many years did you tell me we needed ag? So what happens is you guys see the need in your community and you say, you need to do something in this particular area. That forces our director and our staff to say, how do we do that? We did that with criminal justice. We did that with precision ag. The health science is completely changing. We've done that with there. We've worked with you guys in terms of the precision machining because it's huge in your area. You have a lot of students that are coming down to those particular programs. So it's just saying, how do we do that together? Whether it's in this building or whether it's in our building, how do we make that happen? And it is staying in front of the economy and what the economy provides. It's staying in front. I can tell you right now, between your superintendent and our director, they're chasing money that really affects your school to make your school a better place and make Heartland a better place. They're chasing those monies with grant monies, anything that comes out there that can afford new equipment, new supplies. So I don't have a specific, hey, this is the class you need to get. I don't have that. But I can say it's continuing to educate. I just was on the phone with your guidance counselor today, Jody Metzger, and I talked to her. Since COVID, we can't do field trips. Last year I did 5,500 kids came through Heartland. How am I supposed to get those kids to see what's down there and available? That's a challenge for you guys as a board. How do you get them down there? I told Jody I'll do anything. You want to bring 10 kids at a time? I'll bring 10 kids at a time. You want to come late at night? I'll stay late at night. Whatever it is to get your kids down there to see the building, because you know they won't come if they don't see it. If they don't know it's there, they won't be there. And so that's a challenge for you guys to say as a board, how do we make that happen? We can do virtual things, but again, I'm not a huge proponent of virtual. I like virtual, but I'm not sure that gets it for every kid. So how do we get the kids live and in person? How do we educate the community about what we do? Is it inviting parents to come down and see our programs more, be involved in our programs more? I mean, we are a part of Manchester community, even though we're separate in Wabash, in the Wabash community. So I don't know that answers the question.
I'm not questioning that. I know we're in partnership. I'm just saying, instead of talking about what we've done, we all need to be talking about what we're going to do.
Well, and one thing you're doing is you're coming down and you're getting involved as a company, educating kids about Greenbelt. We would not have known that if it wasn't for you. And then you're helping, and Dave helped get a company that's local to partner with to say, how can we get our kids in there? We had, 15, 18 kids that went into a local company to learn about that company. They probably didn't even know it was in Manchester. So that's the way you do it, is you figure out what is it that you're employed by, how do we get the kids there, how do we get them?
Really, what you're talking about is value proposition. And one of the things that SEAL program does is, and being the internship coordinator, I go out and I meet with all these companies, their HR people, and the things that I talk to them about, and what my goal, our goal at Heartland is on these skilled trades jobs that we train in, we want to be a pipeline. And it's been my experiences, kids will tell you they want to be a brain surgeon or they want to do whatever. They don't really know until they have some experience. My goal is always to get a kid some experience with a local company, whether it's up here in Manchester, whether it's in Wabash. We've had kids in Tipton. We've had some pretty far-reach connections. But the goal is to get them into a company, a local company, and they say, hey, this isn't so bad. Maybe I'll stick around. I kind of like this. And the idea is to create a pipeline into these companies. And this SEAL program sweetens the pot for the employers, because you can, when I use the word onboard, some people don't like it when I use that word, but when I use the word onboard and you have nothing in it, you can kind of scout for new talent. There's all kinds of opportunities with local companies the kids just don't know about.
Well, higher education is not free either. So, I mean, the other thing is you said the exact word I want to hear, pipeline, right?
Pipeline.
Where we're working with these employers, we're vacillating that avenue, and then they've also, just like at the visit to Paragon, they've also got the option of using employer reimbursement for their higher education, which is a heck of a lot cheaper than these parents. I mean, man, you're talking 20 grand over Purdue a year, right? I mean, things aren't cheap, so these are the relationships. If we want more students in the future, we got to have more people live here. We got to have jobs for those people. We got to have houses for those people to live in, and hopefully they're going to start having babies again, right? Because I mean, otherwise it's just downhill. So appreciate everything you guys do.
That's our goal. There's nothing I love. I wear a lot of hats placing a kid in an internship, and I'm going out and I'm marketing the deal with the employer, and then I go back and the kid doesn't really know, so I'm marketing it to him. And I'm always talking to the student, basically, I say, this is a good company, try this out, they have tuition reimbursement, you can stay there, they're willing to onboard you. After you graduate, you can go to college, you can still have your job, you got no debt. I'm selling at every angle when I go out there and do that, and that's my thing for trying to keep kids in the local pipeline, in the local companies, doing that. I don't want to say it's easy, it's not easy, but it's easy when you have the right kid that makes the right fit and makes the right impression on a company. Once you build that bridge, you can start sending people across every year, and they recognize value, and then you're good for eternity.
Thank you.
Well, you make some valid points, and what I'm hearing here is teamwork.
Yep.
You guys are carrying your end, we need to carry our end. So I really thank you for coming. I'd just like to say this, at $175 a credit hour, 2,979 credit hours is $521,325 that parents didn't shell out of their pocket for college credit. There's some kids that walked out of Heartland last year with a semester of college credit in their back pocket that cost mom and dad nothing. So, and I got two more numbers to throw at you. We have quotas for Heartland. Our quota is 131 kids. We got 72. So there's plenty of room for more kids. Mark's going to kill me for saying that. But when you compare us to Wabash High School, their quota is 129 and they got 164 kids. What are they doing that we're not? That's the question that we need to answer. So I really thank you guys for coming.
I can
You
tell you
did
one
that
thing.
a whole lot better than I could have.
I can tell you one thing they are doing that makes sense. If you look at the graduation diploma, the diploma on there says there's 3 boxes they have to check. Some of the schools have figured out you can check the 3 boxes by doing career and technical education. They've figured that out. So your 40 credits are really important, but checking those boxes for graduation are just as important because a kid can get certifications, they can get college credit, they can get the dual credits, they can get, they've figured out that they can check that box. And that's not just a Wabash thing. I think some of the other schools are figuring that out. Your guidance counselors are figuring that out. It's just how do we get the kids down there? You have a little bit more of a challenge than Wabash does because of transportation, but that's a workable thing. So I'll be quiet now. He told me he's going to kill me.
Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, then we have the next level planning grant presentation.
Okay, hello. I am Shelley Leifer, and I'm the business teacher and the internship coordinator over at the high school. As they mentioned, we do work closely, Brian and I and Mrs. Johnson from Southwood, so our internships are precious to us. We work really hard to get the kids out there, and they have kind of, can you go back to the beginning and see for the slides? They talked about the precision agriculture, and that is a next level grant, and we got one too this year. So yay us, go Wabash County. So next level jobs, basically Indiana is rethinking their career and technical education. And why? Why are they rethinking it? Well, because there's, as Mr. Hensley pointed out, a lot of open jobs right now. By this year, 2/3 of jobs are requiring some kind of post-secondary education. And the $1.5 trillion in college debt, there's a lot of things going on. So next slide, please. Enter the governor's workforce cabinet. And basically, a little over a year ago, career and technical education moved from the Department of Ed and now falls under the governor's workforce cabinet. So basically, when I called the Department of Ed to ask a question, like, yeah, you don't call us anymore. So we go through the workforce cabinet, and these course sequences, they mentioned, I think, 4 of them that you guys have, right? They have the health and life sciences, the advanced manufacturing, the agriculture. Well, you got building and construction and transportation. That leaves 1 box. That's us. Okay, so we went for the IT and Business Services Next Level Grant. Next slide, please. And basically the timeline kind of looked like in February of 2020, we filled out a very short survey and we were awarded a planning grant of $5,000. And I'm not going to lie, we did not know what we were getting into. We didn't even know about the move from the Department of Ed to the governor's workforce. And so we spent the next few months working with Grove Wabash County and the Community Foundation to pull together a lot of empirical data that proved that we had a county that would benefit from kids getting business education. And 22 pages later, we submitted our application, and on June 3rd, we were one of the $50,000 recipients. We were one of 12 in the state that got it. And we are the only business program of study. Next slide, please. This is a little bit from what came with the letter that awarded it to us, and the thing I guess I wanted to point out most is both of us, or all of us who got these planning grants, we are the models for the statewide rollout next year in 21-22 school year. So basically we're testing some things for CTE, the Department of CTE, and we're gonna say, yeah, this is great, or no, we're struggling here. Next slide. So what does this look like? And you know, I couldn't agree more with the paying for as much tuition, giving the kids as many college credits as you can. And we spent a lot of time when we were writing this grant with Ivy Tech. Ivy Tech, Community Foundation, and Grove Wabash County all gave us letters of support, which I think really helped with our application process. But basically how this breaks down is there's a principles, there's a concentrator A, a concentrator B, and a capstone. So any student who takes Principles of Business with me now gets not only the 2 high school credits, but they get 6 college credits from Ivy Tech. They get 6 dual credits from Ivy Tech, which is awesome. We've gone with the Business 101 and the BOAT 207, which is Introduction to Business, and BOAT is Business Office Administration and Technology. So basically it's a Microsoft applications class. So what I do is I weave all the Microsoft work into the Introduction to Business work. So it's kind of cool because, like I say, the kids take 1 year with me and they get 6 college credits. They can take then, so this is kind of the launch course, but they could take consecutively with it the Concentrator A or the Concentrator B. So I also teach the Marketing and Management, which Business 105 is Principles of Management, and Marketing 101 is Principles of Marketing. So while they're taking those 2 courses through 1 year, again, they get 6 more credit hours. So just taking these 2 classes in a scope of 2 years, they've got 6 college credits, which is a win-win for everybody. Also, you can see up there where it says Business Admin TSAP, that is where they're trying to pick classes that go towards those 2-year degrees that feed directly into a 4-year degree at any state institution in Indiana. So it's a really good win-win for the kids. Kids that have taken my Ivy Tech marketing have actually transferred those to private schools. Indiana Wesleyan took it as a marketing class. So that student now does not have to take marketing at Indiana Wesleyan. It came in as that, not as just 3 general credit hours. The accounting, the Concentrator B, the career office is working on getting this changed, but right now, unless you have 18 graduate hours in accounting, I cannot teach those for Ivy Tech. They fall under the higher learning commission that says to accreditate them that that's what they require. So they're looking at what that can look like, but I can tell you that they can't take Accounting 101 through Ivy Tech until they take Intro to Accounting through Manchester. So we're still offering accounting, so they have that luxury, and right now we have 1 student taking Accounting 101 for dual enrollment. So he sits in my classroom, and as part of his work-based learning, he's doing this class, which is great. So he's getting the support that he needs, but he's also taking his first college class, and he's taking it online. And then the capstones, the Business 201, those are like business law, international business, higher levels. So again, kids can take that for dual enrollment. There's some that I can teach, but I'm only one teacher. So I can only put so many preps into every single day, or I would gladly teach every one of these. Also, you talk about the SEAL, that is kind of a goal I would like to get to, where we have students taking on business students and maybe doing the Microsoft certification through a SEAL program. So they're getting the state earn and learn, and we're talking to Grow Wabash County about maybe them helping us implement that, because there's no better way to learn how to use a spreadsheet than to get into a real working spreadsheet and start doing some pivot tables and figuring out what it looks like. Next slide, please. So, like I said, when we were planning this out, Ivy Tech put all this together for us. And all of the dual credit things, we've got them starting as sophomores. There is a knowledge assessment that they have to do because they don't have the other requirements as far as GPA and enough high school credits to walk right into a dual credit class. But if they pass this knowledge assessment, which Ivy Tech came in, they got the kids started, the kids did great. I think 7 out of 11 have passed it as sophomores, so they're going to get their dual credit. We couldn't do this without Ivy Tech. We've really forged a good partnership with them. They are incredibly helpful. And so those sophomores will now get their 6 credit hours. They can go on as juniors, and then that leaves their senior years open to do those exploration pieces or take those dual enrollments. So these 2 dual enrollments, I think he says 140 some a credit hour. 170. The kid that we have in there, the only thing that holds us back from that is funding. Some parents get the value of paying for that, but it's still a lot of money. It could $500-700 with the textbook and all of those expenses added in. But it's a great way for students to go. So we're really fortunate that they've given us the money to help us kind of put all this stuff into place right now. I think we can apply one more time next year. Then after that, we're going to have to get creative. But we need to be thinking about, as Mr. Hensley said, going forward, is this where the value is added? Is this where the money needs to be? And I'm just going to throw that out there because that's what I need. And that's that. Final slide, just so you know. Without these educational partnerships, I mean, none of us could do it. And all of our kids are going to all these places. They have been, they are there, they go back, they leave, they come back, and they've gotten great, great experiences from all of these partnerships that we've been able to form. And, you know, they don't run the other way when they see us coming. They say, okay, let's see what we can do. And we couldn't do that. So big shout out to all of them. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
The $500 to $700, is that like a book fee to take those classes?
That's the tuition and the book.
Tuition and the book, is that for the high school or when they get out?
That's while they're in high school. That would be if they went to
Right.
Ivy Tech, period. So they are Ivy Tech students, even if they're in high school.
Okay, so that's per class.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is the state, you know, this is a pilot program, is the state looking at paying Manchester Community Schools per credit hour for offering this?
From what I understand, this is Perkins money, and it cannot pay for tuition.
Okay.
All that Carl Perkins money cannot be earmarked for tuition.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for all your hard work on this.
It was big.
You feel a higher learning committee or whatever on those classes that they do have to pay for? What's your feeling on that?
What do you mean? Say that again,
Are
I'm
they,
sorry.
so you said something about those 3 classes that cost $500 to $700 later on. Is that the capstone ones?
Mm-hmm.
And that's because
Because they could get a technical certificate So they would walk out of Manchester already with a certificate. That's kind of the business. I can't do welding. I don't have a lot of those hands-on things, but that would allow them to have a technical certificate as soon as they leave Manchester High School.
Okay, yeah, I got that part, but you said the reason is because the Higher Learning Commission or something
Yes,
feels
because
like
I
that
can't
needs-
teach accounting for IB Tech. I'm not credentialed to teach accounting for IB Tech because I don't have 18 credit hours in master's level accounting classes.
Okay.
Nor do I really want to get them right now, if you're thinking that too.
Well, you know where I was going, yeah.
Yeah.
Or we get that resource or something. for-
I suppose you're gonna pay for that one, but yeah.
Thank you, Shelley.
You're welcome.
Shelley, I just was looking at all the preps you have in a day, and just thank you. I mean, that's part of a small school. But wow, that's a lot of prep in a day.
As long as the mind can stay there, we'll be okay. But every birthday, I'm like, wow, I don't know how much longer I can do that.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I just have to say, I know that Mrs. Leifer and Mrs. Janegi both put a lot of time and effort into this, so thank you so much for all of that effort that you put in, because I think it'll pay off in the long run. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, thank you.
The next agenda item are the consent items. I'd like to read the donations. There's a donation of 20 cases of water to the schools from the Manchester Moose Lodge. A donation of 75 cases of water to MCS from Sweetwater Church. Donation of $800 to MES from MCS PTO. A donation of 130 Stop the Bleed bags from the following partners: Community Foundation of Wabash County, American Legion Post number 15, Wabash Elks, FOP number 83, Wabash Hardware, Crossroads Financial, Wabash Fire Department, White and Company T-shirts, REMC, Wabash County, Penn Care, and the county SROs. A donation of $75 to MJSHS Girls Soccer Program from Friar Mood Hire. Donation of $200 to MJSHS Girls Soccer Program from the law offices of Matthew Mize. Donation of $600 to the MJSHS Football Program for team shirts from McKee Mortuary. A donation of $150 to MJSHS FFA from Dairyland Seed Company. Donation of $1,250 to MJSHS FFA from Land of Lakes Foundations. Donation of $1,250 to MJSHS FFA from AG Plus. Donation of $500 to MJSHS Library Fund from the PTO, MCS. Donation of $300 to MJSHS Principal Fund from the PTO, MCS. Donation of $30.38 to the MJSHS Library Fund from the PTO of MCS, using script funds from Mary Randall. Donation of $20 to the MJSHS Athletic Fund for audio-visual broadcast of home sporting events from anonymous donor. And a donation of $200 to the MJSHS Emergency Lunch Fund from an anonymous donor. So on behalf of the board, I would just like to thank those who are donating. It clearly shows what a generous community we have. So board, I'm looking for a motion for consent items.
So moved.
I have
I'll second.
a motion from Mr. Flack. Was that you, Mr. Hensley? And a second from Mr. Hensley. Are there any, is there any discussion? All those in favor? Because we're in person, we can just do a...
Yep, there's nobody on Zoom.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? I'm really sorry, Mr. Hensley, but all of the reflection, I can't see that. Okay, motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Mrs. Ayers, before we continue, I think Mr. Baldwin has someone that he'd like to introduce.
Good evening, MCS board members and patrons. It's my honor and privilege to have Mrs. Christina Ryder here this evening. She is the new guidance counselor at Manchester Intermediate School and also Manchester Junior Senior High School. She comes highly recommended with a wealth of experience that will serve her well in her roles both at the intermediate school building and at the junior senior high school building as well. So I'd like to welcome her and give her a chance to say hello this evening.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to help support the students in the schools here at Manchester.
Great. Thank you for being here. Okay, moving on to recommendations for approval. We have two policies, policy 2070 for public solicitations, advertising in the schools, and policy 3110, tobacco-free campus. We can either do those as separate motions or we can do them together. Is there a motion from the board?
I'll move we recommend approval of both of them.
There's a motion for approval of both policies. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A motion from Mr. Flack and a second from Mr. Hensley. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. And we also are looking for a recommendation. We have a recommendation for approval for the permission to advertise the 2021 budget.
Yes, again, just asking for your approval to advertise the 2020-21 budget. Again, the process of this is, with your approval tonight, I will advertise that. We will then have a public hearing of the budget on September 29th, which in that case, we have to advertise 10 days prior to that public hearing. So approval tonight will give us 10 days to advertise before that public hearing, and then we have 10 days. You have to wait at least 10 days after the public hearing to do the adoption of the budget, which we would be in that window to do at the October board meeting. So that's for the 2021 budget. Again, the budget is ultimately determined by the DLGF when they send our 1782 notice and give us the updates on where our funding will be for all of our different levels, debt service, operations, and education. So that's the process. Again, it's just seeking approval to advertise our budget. That way we can have the public hearing on September 29th. Does anyone have any questions? I know you had all the information in your board packet, but if there's other information you'd like or questions you have.
Should we wait and approve this after we get the financial state of the district?
I don't think you need to, ultimately. Again, it's just approval for advertising it. Ultimately, the DLGF will determine our funding levels. And based on last year, we're asking for about $200,000 less in funding than we did a year ago at this time with all those combined. One thing I did do that, for your information, in the budget, I did build in anticipated debt in the event that we'll talk about later if we chose to do a bond issue of any kind, and that we wanted those monies before the end of the year. We have to build that into the 2021 budget, into the debt service. So I've calculated that in kind of a worst case scenario. Should we decide not to do a bond, then when we get our 1782 notice, that will be taken off and that would be adjusted. So we wouldn't have that debt if we chose not to do a bond. If we chose to do a bond of a significant less amount of money, then that would be adjusted at the 1782 as well. So
I make a motion to approve advertising the 2021 budget.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Turflinger. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Mr. Flack. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. All right. Down to discussion information, we have policy 4085, the student attendance.
Yes, we actually had an attendance policy prior to this. Excuse me. And what we did was we kept that same policy, but we went ahead and added attendance and instruction time for in-person instruction, virtual instruction, and hybrid instruction, and gave definitions to those. And then all provisions of the policy will apply to all students enrolled in receiving one of those different formats. So that's what the policy is about. The rest of it is exactly the same as it has been.
Is there any discussion?
I make a motion to approve policy 4085.
I think is this considered a first reading?
This is a first reading.
Okay, sorry.
No worries. All right, then policy 3260, policy 4240.
Yes, it's going both in the students and staff. For the Title IX discrimination, we have the same procedures for both. The final results of the investigation will be determined in an exec session with the board, and they will give the final determination on what the necessary action would be.
Is there any discussion? Right, then policy 3270, policy 4250.
Okay, and this is the same. We will be putting it both for the students and the staff. Title IX sexual harassment. The grievance procedure was changed. Eric Screeton is our Title I coordinator. There are 4 layers to this. That there is the coordinator who will originally get the complaint. There will be investigators, which will be our principals. They don't know that yet. And then there'll be 2 decision makers. The first one will make the initial decision, and then if there is an appeal process, that's where the second decision maker comes in. And so it will take 4 people assigned to this now. Evidently, there was not a clear process before. Didn't like how some of the sexual harassment claims were coming out, so they wanted to put multiple layers in place.
Are there any questions or discussion?
Dr. Grimeau, when you say they, who are you referring to?
Our legislators.
So did all these policies come from the legislature?
Right, they're based on law.
Yeah.
Their draft and we revise, so.
Thank you, Policy Committee, for your work on that.
They're probably right. I'll just make that comment, so.
All right. Legislative update, Mr. Hensley?
Well, so basically, just throwing things out, there was a Supreme Court ruling and a, District 14 ruling, Mark, basically on transgender rights. So the law basically ruled on that state. I know that Tracy or Dr. Grimeau put out something as far as the legislative look on. I thought that was a good compromise on the 100% and 85%, where they decided if the kids were already in school, if they weren't virtual already, you get funded 100% and then 85%. So they kind of split the middle there. Some of the interesting things, we formed a group for the region, and so if anybody has any requests for you feel like we have legislative change needs, we've got a advocate group in the Northeast region for that, and that goes for not just schools, but the community and things like that. But there's some interesting things popping up, like work share, where some of the companies that may not be able to work their employees full time, the state may step in for some of that time. I mean, all this stuff's kind of out in the just being developed. I do see we had a discussion on telework, that procedure that we were talking about. I see that I see that probably is at some point going into legislation on how to rule on that and stuff like that. But the talk was, if we can, anything we can head off with policy that doesn't end up with legislation is good for us, I think, from that standpoint. But other than that, that's about it on the legislative update.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? All right, recognition, Dr. Grimmel?
Yes, this evening I'd like to focus on our coaches and our athletic programs. A school superintendent once made the analogy regarding athletic programs. Athletics is not what's inside your house, but it's in your yard, your landscaping, your bushes, your front patio, your back patio, your windows, your siding, your roof, your gutters, your chimney, etc. Athletics gets people to stop and see what is in your house. It is the curb appeal. During this COVID response, athletes have been more than just curb appeal. Athletes have been, quite frankly, the litmus test for the whole process of reopening. As the athletic department across the state had decision deadlines that were months ahead of school reopenings, the Manchester Athletic Department took this pandemic seriously and from March has held a series of weekly email sessions, discussions, and meetings to get our student athletes back on track. We have had individuals working throughout the summer every day in the office with 90-degree heat and for 2 months to develop comprehensive plans and strategies that align with the IHSAA guidance, DOE's guidance, and the state governor's office. We have had coaches from all sports take ownership of these difficult situations and never complained about being asked to do multiple things outside their normal coaching duties. We have had coaches who technically only worked for 3 months dedicated time and energy over the last 6 months to help with workouts, giving up their time to help screen athletes, setting up extra cleaning stations so the athletes could continue on. The athletic department has done an amazing job of answering the challenges of constantly adjusting our attendance policies with screening questions, adding multiple layers of cleaning to their routines, and routinely having to be flexible with schedule changes and practices plans alterations. We'd like to thank all the coaches for their commitment in the following proper medical and scientific guidance, even when families pushed back. Coaches bought into the idea of wearing masks at all times, spreading out, no lockers, individual groups, increased questions at attendance, increased communication with teams, and many more adjustments. Our coaches understood our difficult situation and continued to do what they knew was right. However, they were accepting of the notion that exercising an abundance of caution in July might save us sessions in August and September. All of this effort was led by Eric Screeton, and we are grateful for his perseverance and leadership to ensure our programs were able to start in a safe environment for all of our athletes. Mr. Screeton has asked me to thank the following people: Dr. Lippy for his leadership during this pandemic and assistance as he constructed our athletics reopening plan, Jay Foley for assisting with setting up the new cleaning procedures and protocols, also Jack Ripley and Keith Miller for listening to Mr. Screeton's request on facilities and suggestions with locker rooms, storage areas, etc. They are two of the most helpful individuals that add such a tremendous value to MCS. Joe Kerr and all the office staff for being the first line of questions and getting people to the right answers before problems emerged. Also, Kevin Watson and Parkview Sports had a series of Zoom meetings and in-person meetings that really helped drive home the seriousness of COVID, but yet offer a reachable solution to bring back student athletes. Mr. Screeton appreciates that partnership. And M.A. Heyer for her guidance as she walked through some difficult phases to the reopening. She was a great resource. Randy Self for the past 2 months of COVID as we launched the Squire Athletes YouTube channel. The streaming option has been quite well received by the public with tons of positive feedback. Many schools kicked fans out of the stands and then they went right to pay-per-view, and MCS did not feel like that was the right move to make. We know there are many others in the community that we need to thank throughout this process of adjusting to the demands of COVID, and we apologize if we have omitted anyone. We realize it takes all of us working together to ensure successful outcomes for our athletes, and the Squire Athletic Department continues to make it a priority to do whatever it takes to keep Squire athletes moving forward. We are #Squire Strong. Thank you. Appreciate all of those people working together to make that happen for our athletes.
I really like the recognition portion of the agenda. Thanks for adding it on and keeping it there. All right, then the final discussion item for tonight is the financial state of the district. Mr. Markham and Dr. Grimo.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to just go through some slides here and just give you some information, kind of where we're at today. And again, this is discussion, this is information. This isn't necessarily to alarm you or you know, I'm going to end here with financial stuff, so that it's not as much fun as recognizing what Dr. Grimo did. But there are things that we need to think about and consider, and we're going to give some options. And those options aren't the end all. There may be other options, and those are things that we're going to discuss and talk about and value input. So here we go. Just to give you an update, at the end of August 31st, our cash balance, and you can see there in our education fund, we're a little over 1.4 million. Our operations fund's 963,000. Debt service fund 502, and then in our rainy day fund we have a little over 355,000 in there. So just wanted to give you an update where we are today on those at the end of August. Enrollment, and you saw this slide I think back in June when we were talking about financials as well. And again, just wanted to show kind of where we're at today. In the spring of 2020, our enrollment count was 1489. Then in the spring, we had to submit what we thought our enrollment may be for this fall to the DOE. And just based on graduation numbers and typical kindergarten classes, we thought we'd be around 1459, and that's the number with the asterisk down there. The number in parentheses is the actual number that we're at sitting today, or as of Friday at least, at 1354. So you can see we're about 105 students short of what we expected this fall. I will add that 1354 number does include virtual, hybrid, and traditional students. We predicted around 100 kindergartners. We have 79. And then we had originally expected around 113 seniors, and we're at 102 right now. So those are kind of our real-time numbers as far as enrollment goes. And I think one thing you can see too on the far right side, and we talked about this in the past, our graduating classes are bigger than our enrolling kindergarten classes over the last 6-7 years there. So just one dynamic into enrollment. One thing that we've tried to track during this registration period for this summer is where did our students transfer to, or where did they go? And these are rough numbers based on what we had at the time, but it kind of breaks it down here. You can see our combined totals at the bottom. 64 students went to other schools, whether in our county or outside our county. 44 students chose some version of a homeschool, and we don't know all the reasons for that, but COVID has certainly played a part in that. 9 students chose some other virtual type of schooling, whether it's an Indiana Connections online type of virtual schooling. 8 students moved out of state, and then you can just see the breakdowns there. We had, at the time I put this together, about 128 students that had left Manchester Community Schools. I did go back and try to tally where did the students go to, at least surrounding schools around us. So on the left-hand side there, you can see the school district, and then the number of students that registered within that school district according to the best information we could gather, that our secretaries could gather throughout the registration process. So you can go down and see there, Huntington, there's Northfield, North Miami, Peru, Southwood, Tippecanoe Valley, Wabash, Warsaw, and Whitgo. Those were the predominant schools around us that gained the most students from our school district. And again, I don't know why they went there. I don't have those reasons, but I do have the numbers at least. And then the remaining 64 students that totally left to go to other schools, those students that aren't represented in this count would have moved many counties away, Indianapolis, Marion, farther, Fort Wayne, even farther away, so I just didn't indicate them in this chart. State tuition dollars, and just kind of to recap, in February of 2020, we had $14.89 for our enrollment. At that time, we were receiving $6,046.96 per student in state basic tuition. And then you can see the total on the right, just a little bit over $9 million in basic tuition support. In fall of 2020, currently, we had predicted our count to be $14.59. This year, our state tuition dollars increased to $6,205.37. So had we hit our number of $14.59, we were looking a little over $9 million and $53,000 in tuition support dollars. We're currently being funded at that $14.59 number up until probably through October. That'll be our funding number at that point. The September count date is staying on September 18th. Based on legislation at this time, there was talk about potentially moving that. They are not moving that count date. So as of right now, if our number would stay at 1354, our enrollment, prior to the count date on September 18th, at $6,205.37 per student, our funding will be a little over $8,402,000. So essentially a $651,000 decrease in funding based on our estimated enrollment in the fall. Now what the state will do is they will adjust that funding beginning in November and carry that through until the February count date, where they will then readjust either in favor or negatively based on your enrollment at that time. That is to say, if that does not change by the legislators when they get into session after the first of the year, okay? But by state statute, that is how it is set up at this time. We did get the good news that the funding for virtual students will be at 100% at least through the February count date. At that point, that could change. Again, that's going to be legislation that'll have to determine that at that point. So our current basic tuition support payment, so right now we receive $754,469.67 a month based on that $14.59 enrollment. So from July through the end of October, that's what we're receiving monthly from the DOE. Then once they do the count date in September, they'll adjust that. And again, beginning around November, based on our 1354 enrollment, our monthly payment would go down to about a little over $700,000 a month. So that'll be the adjustment that they will make and carry that through until at least the February count, where they would then adjust it again probably in April. Right now, our average monthly expenditures in the education fund average to be about $839,000 a month. That's based on the first 8 months and just using that average to carry out the rest of this 4 months here left. That's what our average would be at this time. So you can see the total cost there. So essentially, November through June, state tuition income would equal $5,601,000. November through June expenses would be a little over, it'd be $6,719,000. So we're spending about $1.1 million more in expenses than what we would bring in if we maintain that $839,000 a month spending in the education fund. Okay, so obviously we need to tighten our straps a little bit and reduce those amounts. Now, we were able to realize some savings, and again, we've talked about some of these as well. We also know that some of these savings are one-time savings that we incurred based on school being shut down due to COVID from essentially mid-March to the end of May. But we have, from the end of last school year to the start of this school year, realized a savings of around $370,000 in teacher and classified salary and benefits. A lot of that is essentially any teacher that had left or staff member that left. If that position was replaced, then it was replaced at a lower dollar amount than when they came in. A new person may not be taking benefits where the previous person in that position was taking benefits. So there has been some savings there to start this school year. Lawn care, summer painting, changing our insurance carrier, from Liberty Mutual to EMC saved us $21,844 this year. So those are some of the savings that we've seen at this point. The teacher sick bonus, this is tied into the teacher contract, and discussions with MTA will when we get to bargaining, we'll obviously talk about this, but this is a potential savings, and just to explain that, in the past, teachers that missed 3 or less days of school would receive a $500 stipend at the end of the year. Obviously, you're trying to reward teachers for being in school. We now know that during this time period, we don't necessarily want to reward people to come to school sick. We want them to stay home when they're not feeling well due to the COVID. And so those teacher bonuses are kind of a bad incentive right now, although it was a good thing at the time. So that's something that we would look at, but on average, that's what we've paid out in that bonus for those teachers in the past. We did save by only making one bus purchase this year, and then we also had a grant that helped offset the cost of that one bus purchase. So there's some savings we've yielded there at this point. June and July, we were able to save around $18,000 from the previous June and July by just turning off the AC, turning it way down, shutting down buildings, and having our custodial crews work in 2 buildings at a time instead of 4 different buildings at a time. And so we were able to utilize some savings there, and that's something we'll continue to look at and build on as we move forward. A part of that also was we went to a 4-day work week in the summer with those people that were on a year-round contract. So we worked 4 10-hour days and took Fridays off and shut everything down to get an extra day of shutdown in there during the summer. Transportation fuel savings, you can see that was predominantly just not having buses run when we were closed down by the state. And then back last August, we had started doing some utility savings and doing some of those things to try to help our utilities. And we were able to save about $62,000 just from August through May in utilities alone. And some of that is attributed to obviously a mild winter helped, and it wasn't as cold as it's been in the past. And then obviously being shut down mid-March through May helped with some of that as well. So we hope to continue to have savings in the utilities. We'll see to what extent we're able to do that. So roughly a total savings of about $668,000. Again, some of those we know are one time, and we may not see those savings again moving forward. But there are things to build on, and we'll continue to work on ways to save as much as we can. So what are our options, or what are some things that we can possibly do to combat that $651,000 in enrollment funding that we're going to face here? And these are in no particular order, and are not labeled in any order other than when they came to my mind and as we talked about them. And again, these are options. They're not the end-all, be-all. They're just things to make us think and figure out how can we maybe cut that amount of $651,000 lost in funding due to enrollment. One option is to essentially stay status quo, continue doing what we're doing, implement cost-saving measures through utilities and things that we've done, and continue to do that. Consider not replacing positions through attrition. If they open, reevaluate, do we really need to replace them? Try to think of other additional energy cuts. Potential programming cuts would be something you would look at. And we know that if we really don't do anything, we'll significantly lower our cash balance in our education fund, by June of next year if we just really do nothing. And there, the last line down there, budget shortfall, that's just the $651,000 that we're short as of right now, based on what we thought we would have enrollment-wise. Option 2 is, again, a consolidation of services, and we talked about this back in June. Again, we're still doing our cost-saving measures. We could RIF or do attrition, and if we did 9 staff positions, we implement additional energy program cuts, potential programming cuts, repurpose MIS. We could yield a savings of about $339,351. That still leaves us about $312 short of that $651,000, but it does put a little dent in it. Gives us some time to evaluate and look at things. So essentially a repurpose would affect essentially 9 staff positions because we could consolidate some services, and that's what we talked about back in June. And again, just it's going to be out there, and we'll just put it out there as a consideration. Option 3 and 4 are taking a look at taking out an operating bond, and the first one would be for $335,000. The second one would be for $670,000. Again, we're still trying to do all the same things, cost-saving measures, looking at attrition and not replacing some positions that would come open. Riffing would always be a potential if we were looking to make up the total amount of those dollars. What does an operating bond also provide us? Potentially ways to continue to pay a CNA position. The remote learning coordinator that we have is just 1-year positions that we're paying through the CARES Act dollars. We know that money won't be there next year. At least we're not counting on it being there next year unless the government says otherwise. So those monies could be utilized to keep those type of positions in place. Obviously, as we work through the strategic planning process and we get more visions on where we're going, that provides us a little leverage there with monies. Would allow us to keep programming options for students. If we don't do anything, then we will have to start looking at some programs. Are there things we will have to cut? And then these bonds also give us a chance to reevaluate after 1 year where we're at. It will not take away our cash balance deficit, but it'll reduce it and make it not quite as bad. So our shortfall, if we did a $335,000 operating bond, our shortfall is still $316,000 based on that 651 number of enrollment. And if we did option number 4 there, a bigger operating bond, obviously we're on the plus side of that one with the bigger dollar amount. And then, you could combine options. You could take a look at, okay, what if we did option number 2, which was on the slide before. We did a repurpose of MIS. We did some staff elimination or consolidation of services based on that. And then we also did an operating bond. We would be ahead about $22,000 if we did 2 of those things together. So those are just 4 options. As we brainstormed and talked about things, there may be other options. There may be other ways to look at this. And that's why we just wanted to bring it to discussion and give you the information. We're not making any decisions tonight by any means, but just curious to see what everyone thinks. I am waiting on information from Baker Tilly to get us more concrete tax impacts a bond would have. So what would a $335,000 operating bond, what would the effect be on the tax rate if we did that bond on a 1-year payment. They'll also give us a 2- and a 3-year payment so that we could see what impact that may have. And then the same for the $670,000 operating bond. I have there a 2-year payment, but they'll push it out to 3 years and give us some options to look at. And when I get those numbers, I'll definitely pass those on as well to you. But just wanted to give you kind of an update where we're at, kind of what we're looking at, and ways that maybe we can reduce that $651,000 funding and tuition that we may realize.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Markham. Board, do you have any questions or comments for discussion?
I have a question. Jeremy, how many transfer students did we gain?
Good question. I have that on a different sheet. It was about 28 total students, if I recall. No, it was more than that. 48, I believe. Let me look that up. Hold on. I'll have to pull up on my spreadsheet.
Okay.
Anyone else have any other questions in the meantime?
This is kind of a weird question. Do you have any idea how much property tax we send to the state and what we get returned?
It's a good question. I do not know that. Not off, yeah.
Teresa, in your experience, how often or how common is an operating bond?
It actually is fairly common. Steve, you can, we've done one in the past here. Do you want to talk a little bit about it, or? So it's a common practice if there's a need to continue operations. And many times it's due to making adjustments or a situation similar to this, loss in enrollment. And I can tell you, I have been I've talked to probably about 70 different superintendents last week, and there were only 2 schools that I know of that either maintained or gained a little bit. Everyone else has lost students, and most of us have lost more than 50, and some as high as 160, just in Northeast Indiana. So we're not alone, so don't feel that we are, but we just have to figure out what we're going to do about it. And did you find what you?
Yeah, it was 47.
47.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys are done with it. The reason why I asked that is, so we're down 105 students. Did that take in the 47 transfers that came in?
Yeah. Yeah, we have some students that, we aren't accounted of that 105. There's some in there, we don't know why they left. We just don't have that information on them yet.
But the reality of it is we're down 135 from last spring's count.
Correct.
But we're down 105 from what you projected.
Yes. Yes.
I think, I don't want to get off topic here, but I think we need to really look at the reason why we're losing some students, and that's got to be part of what we're doing here in terms of if we were to go with option 4 or a combination of any of them, what are we doing different to, part of that's got to be a plan, a financial plan and a strategic plan, which I know we're going to hear in a few weeks, so what we can do different to retain and to bring back, because I don't want to be having the same discussion in 2 years. So, as Mike would say, we got to do some root cause analysis and really find out, if we didn't get the 47 to transfer in, which is probably pretty typical, right, Steve? We always have around 50 transfer in.
Yeah, we've had up to 60, 70 too.
Yeah. So, anyway, I think that's got to be part of the decision here in terms of what do we do in the future so we're not back here with these options to kind of springboard us into that.
Which is actually why we were looking at option 3 pretty strongly, because we know that will give us an opportunity to work the strategic planning process, put in marketing in place, try to reevaluate what we're doing, and look at our remote learning program as a source of revenue. And we've already done some surveys to kind of see where we're falling there. But this would just kind of maybe give us a 1-year look. Let's get through, let's try to figure out what we need to do differently and make some changes based off of what we need to do and what the numbers are saying. So.
Jeremy, can you go back to the slide that had where each student went?
Yeah.
While you're going there, Dr. Grimaud, did you say you guys are looking at option 3 or the combination of 3 and 2?
Well,
Slide 5 missing.
yeah, it'd be more of like the combination of 3 and 2, because that would give us, be able to cover all of our losses and then some. And then we'd be able to have time to put more cost-saving measures in place, do some things through attrition as opposed to riffing. If we don't have to go down that route, we certainly wouldn't want to do that, but it'll give us a little bit more time to be able to make some choices based on our financial circumstances.
Okay, so this slide's disturbing to me, okay? And I'll tell you why. I look at Whitco, Warsaw, Wabash, Tippy, North Miami, Northfield, Huntington. Add those numbers up. My guess is that's all coming from the line, basically. We used to market that so hard. We were out there telling our story. We were marketing monthly, quarterly, whatever it was. And I think we quit telling our story. And I wonder how much of that is because we went through some tough times. We quit talking about all the great things that we do here. And there's several students right there.
51.
So it is, we added it up. So I'd like to, I don't know if you can find out how we lost them or why we lost those folks, but it'd sure be nice to know why. And I really feel like we got to get back to telling our story and all the positive things that we have going on here. And we've not done that for, help me out, 3 years, 4 years. So.
I think it would also be nice to see, there's the number of our kids that went those places, but what's the number of Huntington kids that are coming here or what?
Yeah, true.
Well, we need to promote people to have babies in this community, that's number one. I mean, and I'm with you, Steve, we need a positive, it needs to be positive. We've had negative, so you gotta get like this. On this bond, I hate debt, I like to stay debt-free, and it's a different business than businesses, right? You guys are budget-driven, you don't use budget, you gotta get it. The whole thing behind finance of schools just kind of blows my mind, but if we're going on $1 million bond, I want to understand how that's an investment. It just seems like we spend money. I want to understand, and I guess it's probably to your point, Steve, what you're saying here is, we go in debt $1 million, I'm fine with debt as long as you're making something off of it. So what are we going to do with that $1 million that we see as an investment versus just kind of getting by? Because I'm not we can tighten the belt buckle and we can do what we need to do to get through this year and next year. What I'm worried about is like 2024, some of these, as we get here, there's been things, the roof, there's been some things kind of kicked down the road and we're cleaning some things up. So, if we're going to borrow $1 million, I want to kind of know how that's going to be an investment, and maybe that's the point you're trying to make here, right? Is what are we going to do with it to turn the ship around? Because it's kind of going the wrong way, and I think the analysis of that is very critical. But I also think we need to be looking outside the box, and the offerings exactly what you're doing there, Shelley. Good job. And you too, Teresa. That business thing is exactly what I'm looking for, is how do we differentiate ourselves? How do we pull these students in and offer them something that no one else offers? And yeah, what you want to call it, pillaging or whatever people want to call it, You know, it's the same thing. The strong survive and the weak go down, you know, and I don't want to be on the other end of that. I hate failure in any form, and I just feel, you know, if we are going to do a bond, that's got to be an investment, not a spend. You know, we got to be doing something concrete with that thing, and it ought to be involved with the community as well. I mean, again, we got to start looking at this thing together, and on the money side, you know, what can we do with the neighboring community businesses? You know, I got all kinds of clients in all these school districts, you know, and they want things like Lean Six Sigma. You know, I got one guy in this freaking state, Mark Hobbs, down at Heartland, that'll even take the chance to teach something like that to our kids. You know, you're talking about business, you know, it's more than finance. It's operations. How do you run a business correctly? I got kids coming out of these colleges that have no clue about some of these skill sets, and we got to embed some of these skill sets in these kids. We got to differentiate our kids to the business community is the main thing we got to do in investment. You know, so I'll kind of leave it at that. But you know, it scares me when, you know, when we're talking debt to get by. If we're going in debt, it better be something that we're going to invest in that's going to turn this ship around. You know, otherwise we're just wasting fuel. You know, is the way I'm looking at it. So.
Well, and to kind of go into what you were saying, you said, you know, we need to have more babies. I think that's what you said.
I'm serious about that.
That's here. I mean, it's no joking matter. I mean, let's be realistic about it. How do you get people to come to your community? You got to have a community that's thriving. You got to have a community that's wanting to grow. You got to have a community that's working together. This school corporation's done all it can do for the 15 years I've been here. I mean, we've got some outstanding people that have done some outstanding things, but you know, sooner or later, this town and these people in this community are going to have to come in here and listen to this, or before long, you just might as well consolidate. I mean, you might as well say the word. You can't keep going on like we're going and survive. If you're really here for the kids and you really want to provide the best, cutting programs and cutting things out isn't the way to do it. And our town council needs to come in and listen to this. We need to work with them. We need to talk about things that are going on to get businesses here. The community, in my opinion, needs to decide what it wants to be. Does it want to be a bedroom breakfast community? Does it want to be a retirement community? A college community? A manufacturing community? But it's going to have to do something to promote itself. What does it have for young kids to move back that graduate from here? How many do we have graduate this year? 100?
Hold on. 126.
You know, do we even have housing to support that? Even a third of the kids or a quarter of those kids, you know. We have a huge housing problem in this community. The county as well. I'm not putting it all on the community, but I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. And I sat around a round table last winter. The community foundation went around the county asking, they did small group discussion. And I did not bring the pamphlet with me, but they were asking questions about the county. What do we need? And you know, the number 2 thing on there, which really kind of shocked me a little bit, was quality K-12 education. And I'm pretty prideful. I think we've got a great K-12 education here, but yet people didn't think we did. So is that a lack of promoting our product? I don't know. But I mean, it's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we could go on for hours talking about it, but we're just going to have to make some changes, and we're going to have to get back to telling our story and moving ourselves forward and getting back our enrollment back here and working together. So.
To Dr. Rameau's point about time, you know, I don't think I'm interested in putting a Band-Aid on something that needs stitches. So I did a little homework here. We're fighting a 40-year decline in population in Wabash County. 2020, there was 31,000 people in this county. By 2050, we're going to be down to 25,000. And the whole board got this a year ago, 2019. I'm not pointing my fingers at anybody. There's some pretty alarming numbers in here. That's why I went and got copies and gave them to the whole board. So They predicted in 2016-17 that Manchester Community Schools is going to lose 172 kids. We didn't do anything about it. They predicted MSD was going to lose almost 200 kids. Wabash City Schools is going to gain 64 kids. And just like the numbers that were presented tonight from Heartland, if you think about Wabash County as a giant fishing pond, and the fish being the students, we're all fishing for the same thing, because everybody's having less kids. So if we're doing the same thing everybody else is doing, they send out a postcard, we send out a postcard. Our postcard better be better than their postcard. If we're teaching this class, we better be teaching it because they have all these options. And to Steve's point, we're right. We need to change what we're doing. We can't borrow our way out of debt. I'll say the word consolidation. That's where we're headed. And there's people out there licking their chops, looking at us, just waiting for us to fail. These numbers don't lie. You know, I talked to Jeremy today. We're already under the number that they predicted. So what happens, I'll be devil's advocate. So we do a one-year plan here, and we pass a $300,000 bond, and we leave our rainy day fund where it is, and we lose 100 kids next year. What are we going to do then? The time for a strategic plan is right now. Not 6 months from now, not 3 months from now, it's right now. Okay? And I'm gonna go on the record, I'm not in favor of any bond at this point. We got $355,000 in a rainy day fund. I say we spend it. Let's get through to June. By that time, the election will be over. The legislature will be back in session. We'll find out if we got the same governor or a different governor. It buys us a little bit of time. If this board makes a commitment to use the rainy day fund, let's get through till June. And then if we got to make cuts, we make cuts. If we got to pass a bond, we pass a bond. You know, I mean, it's not like this information wasn't out there. It's there. I'm just an old pipeliner. I don't have any of them fancy initials after my name, but I went and found this information, and I shared it before, and now I'm sharing it again. You know, maybe $70 isn't a whole lot of money to a homeowner living in town. Maybe $7,000 isn't a whole lot of money to somebody running a business. But $70,000 to a farmer is a pretty big chunk to have come out of your bottom line. And at the end of the day, I just feel like we need to put a committee together. We need to start moving forward and figure out what we're going to do to bring the kids here. We got to do it better than everybody else. Hey, we got a great school district here. But for whatever reason in the last 5 years, you know, Mr. Flack uses the terminology, you know, we're on the deck and we're pulling against the string. We're ready to launch like an F-16, but so far we got a failure to launch. So I really think that passing a bond right now is a bad idea. I think we tighten our belt, we spend our rainy day fund. We're in the middle of a COVID pandemic. I'm only one vote. I only get to cast one vote, but I say let's buy ourselves a little bit of time. Let's get through the election. We can start putting a committee together right now, looking at this. As soon as the election's over with and the legislature convenes, we're going to have a lot better picture of what the finances look like.
And Dave, those are predictions, right? Those are trend lines. And the assumption on those is correct. And I guess you're right in what you say, but one thing that gets me is, right, you can take those numbers and you can read them all day long, and everybody in this darn county can follow those numbers. But that's the passive freaking victim mentality that's making me sick in this country. Take those numbers and do something about it. You know, bias for action, you know? So there may be a time, let me finish. There may be a time where we do need to bond, but that bond needs to be investment, not getting by, you know? So I'm gonna throw that out at you, is sometimes you need to invest to make money, right? That's investment.
You got to spend money to make money, but we're 2 years out from being able to quality repurpose MIS.
Well, I don't know about that.
That's what they want to do. You can't jam 25 sixth graders in a room with no windows. Because if you want to do that, I nominate you to go teach them, you know.
That's how I taught for my first 4 years. Actually, I was 32
Actually,
seventh
taught my
graders
kitchen table.
in a room without
I'm saying
me.
you have to spend money to make money, I get that, but I don't like this rush to plan. You know, we had 3 different plans a month and a half ago. You know, if we'd have done something then, we could have put this on the ballot, and we could have let the community. We gotta get the community, you know, policy 2010 says we consider the community. How are we doing that? This is a big issue. This is a big issue when you start talking to business owners. You know, we can't attract business here. Every time we run short of money, we raise taxes. Give me a plan. Show me that, okay, we're gonna take in 10 million, we're gonna spend 9.75, and we're gonna live within our means. And if we get hit with 100 student loss down the road, and we got $1 million sitting in the bank, we're good to go. We can't continue to spend 10 million, or take in 10 million and spend 10 million every year. We can't keep going back to the well, because guess what? Every time somebody pulls a student, that's $6,000 to walk out the door. Maybe I'm not looking at this the right way. I'm willing to spend money, but I need the who, what, why, where, and when, and how we're gonna get there.
Well, it's gotta be an investment, that's the point. What's the recommendations in that study? They got numbers.
Yeah, they got numbers, but you won't like it. Basically, it's here on the last page. It says, maintain a competitive public K-12 education system, develop programs to inform K-12 students about local job opportunities and related skill requirements, which we're working on some of that. Create sustainable incentives for young adults to start their careers in Wabash. Build a county-wide brand, and the other one was, it basically talks about consolidation.
Yeah, I read it, I'm just asking you to.
You just wanted me to say it, right?
Yep.
Okay. There's a lot of ways to get through this. I just think we need to take our time and involve the community and figure out where, number one, where we need to go and how we're going to get there. And then we can go ask for a bond if we need one.
Mr. Smith, could I ask you a question? How often you guys talk about this at town council?
Talk about the population decline quite often.
Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations to help us?
No, this is the first time I've heard any of this information. Now, the information you just talked about, Mr. Turflinger, I've read that same document. But, no, I wouldn't have anything off the top of my head.
I think that's where we need to go right there as a community. We need to get a group together and start looking at this from every angle. You know, not just, the school is not going to pull this thing off is what I'm saying, right? It's a community thing. We need to be looking at angles. We need to leverage businesses in this thing. You know, they're out there hungry for people, right? I backed off of that stuff. You know, Paragon, you know, we went up to Zimmer. You know, that's who we need to be tapping into. We need to, you know, for 12, 14 years, you know, me and my friend went round and round about where businesses should go in this county, and there is a highway down there. But, you know, that little pre-med tech thing is living proof, right, that those people can come here and succeed, basically. And you guys have done a good job. Adam's done a good job, right? That's what we need to be focused on and grow. We need kind of, you know, what I told Brooke the other day is, why don't we market ourselves as an educational community? How do we differentiate ourselves from the rest of the county? We got a university, right, Rick? I mean, you're up there. We got, you know, you brought up Milton. We got MCS. You know, we got Learn More Center. You know, there's just things, you know, this whole thing's kind of goofy to me. You know, 14 years ago, we got everybody in a bus, right? And all the superintendents of all 3 county schools. We had business leaders, you know, Jeff Kellman and I, we went up there and benchmarked Kalamazoo Promise. You know, good, it's awesome program. You know, and one thing they had that we don't have is they had Upjohn. people there that had millions of dollars to donate to that program. You know, but they're still thriving up there, and that's similar to what we need to look at. I know this group, the Fabulous 32, or whoever was on this group, you went with them, Dave, right? You went Benchmark. Where was that? Van Wert, Ohio. You know, so it's not a. I don't see this as just a school thing. We got to do what we can to promote, you know, and if we're going to go in debt, then let's invest. Is all I'm saying. But the thing is, I think we're kind of missing the boat here. This is a rare opportunity when we got those people. We're the closest one in the county to those folks in ortho. They got thousands of jobs they got to fill over the next few years. We are remiss if we don't take advantage of this opportunity as a school system, you know. And it may be things that you're not used to teaching, that we're not used to teaching. It's other skill sets out there that don't fit whatever they have in DOE and things like that. And that's where we need to take this stuff. We need to be coordinating with these businesses and find out what do you need. That's the purpose of having those initial meetings with them and develop curriculum that fits straight to them. Where these kids, okay, pathways, whatever. I'm telling you, it's pipelines, man. We can shoot these kids right in those businesses, and that's what the business needs. If we start doing things like that, why can't the businesses help us fund equipment and things like that? We don't need to mimic what Heartland's doing. But if you're going to talk to closing the school, you guys are going to get my blood pressure spiked here real quick because those assets are important to us. You start closing schools and give away schools and stuff like that, and then you might as well ticket it right to consolidation is the way I'm feeling about it. So I think there's a lot of activity we can be doing, and it's not necessarily on Dr. Grimaud and the administrators. We got to step up as a community on this stuff. I mean, it's time. The time to talk is over. You know, we're getting to a point where it's getting critical. And it's no different than any demand. Bryce, you operate a place. You take your demand away, and what do you got? You're going to lay people off. You're going to sell assets. That's not the way business grows. You know, we need a sales plan, basically. We need promotion, and we need to figure out what it is we need to put in our curriculum that differentiates our kids, that those kids want to come here versus another place. And I think that's what's kind of going on here within the county. They're leveraging some things that we aren't. And I know that's the point you're trying to make, Dave. I mean, you know, like talking, it's done, you know, the talking time's done. It's time for action, you know. So
I reached out to a superintendent that when we had our 2018 issue on the ballot, he had one. And this is where the idea come from. And, you know, business operates in black and white and education operates in the gray. And black and white likes spreadsheets and no red on it, and education's more, well, give us the money and we'll figure it out. Now, I don't mean to offend anybody when I say that, but that's what I see. Okay, so I had a board member tell me that in this community, 20% of the people are involved in care or just want to cause trouble, and the other 80% don't care. I disagree with that. And I reached out to a friend who's a superintendent, and one of the ways that they passed their $10 million bond for security and stuff is they put an advisory committee together for the school board. And every school board member appointed one person to seek and hear input from the community, and they put a couple of administrators on it and their business manager. So if you think about it, we got a 7-member board. If everybody picks one person and a question comes up and the board needs input from the community, if every one of those people, because everybody here but me is still working, if every one of those representatives goes and talks to 10 people, you get 70 answers back, you know? I mean, if they talk to one person, they get 70 answers back. If they talk to 10, you get 700 answers. Now you're getting some input from the community. Are we going the right way? Are we going the wrong way? Well, you know, well, where's the focus? So I'd like this board to consider putting together an advisory committee, because, you know, we got the strategic plan coming. We're going to have to make a financial plan. You know, maybe we're going to have to make some changes in the curriculum. And we have a policy. It's 2010. That says the community will be considered. Okay, yeah, you can email a board member, you can email a superintendent, you can put an idea on the webpage. That's not the same as sitting down across the table and having a cup of coffee with somebody and looking in their eyes and sensing and feeling what they got to say about education. It can be grandparents, it can be parents of students, you know, and I'd like to see 2 administrators, you know. You gotta keep the number manageable. What do you think? It's just a tool for the board. They don't have any power or anything. It's just to gather information and hear input from the community.
Joe, did you want to comment?
I'm done. I put my idea out there. Some board, they wouldn't do it, fine. They don't want to do it, that's fine. I'd just like to know how are we addressing policy 2010? How are we involving the community?
So I'll respond to that. I don't dislike the idea, Dave. I quite like it. I mean, you and I have spoke about it. I think the question at hand, however, is what direction do we want to give Teresa and Jeremy to go forward in? And I agree with, you know, what Mike is saying. I think if we're going to look at a bond, we need to look at it as an investment. We have the strategic plan coming up, I think on the 22nd, a report out on it.
That's correct.
I think the strategic plan and a financial plan need to go hand in hand. And then I think it'd be good to bring in some community members, whether it's one from each board or however we decide to do that. I think that's probably a really good idea. But I think we got to get a direction first and then bring in to fine tune that direction. And I think it has to be I'm not opposed to a bond if it is an investment and it's tied to a strategic plan and a financial plan to get us, to springboard us into the future. And then what you said, Dave, if I could summarize, then bring in, you know, what does that look like? And then I think that's where the community really needs to get involved. But we got to give you guys a direction so that you could go start working on a financial plan that will be similar or coexist or support the strategic plan. So that's how I feel about it.
Well, I don't think there'd be anything wrong with augmenting an advisory board. I mean, every major university has an industry advisory board with some of the business community that we're looking to focus on, you know, and linking them tighter to our school corporation in some way. You know, and that may not even be in our community, right? That may be somebody from Zimmer, that may be somebody from Depew, it may be, you know, Omco. I mean, I know a lot of businesses around here, I just feel like we're not tapping them the way we should be.
I agree with that. I think the advisory board could take many different shapes, and I think that depends on what our strategic plan looks like. You know, if we are really serious about the orthopedic community, then our strategic plan has to kind of evolve around that a little bit. Then our finances have to evolve around that. Then our advisory board certainly should pull from that group of industry.
So again, here we are, making a strategic plan and making a financial plan without input from the community.
That's
I hear what you're
incorrect.
saying, but if we had
That's incorrect.
That's true.
We've already had a lot of community members involved in the strategic plan. Every school has had community members in, parents in.
How
They
many?
brought them in. Well, they're going to roll that out and tell you exactly the numbers that they've had. And then also the night that they roll it out, we were going to allow more community input that evening by how I was going to do it. And then form committees based off on that. So, I mean, but if you don't want to wait for that, you need to give us direction. Because we're trying to do it through that process.
So tonight, do you need us to say we're leaning towards one option or the other? Or can we wait till the 22nd have that strategic plan and.
Well, that was the goal, is to inform you where we were at, give you some options, have you think about them for 2 weeks, come back with some questions if you have them. And then we were gonna roll out what we have accomplished so far at MES, MIS, and then the junior, senior high. They're very excited about what they've done, feel like it can move us forward. But, I mean, if you don't want to do that, one of the things I heard was using the rainy day fund. I would never recommend that at all, because if we ever have an emergency, we would have no money to draw on very quickly, and that's just not something, and we already have a very, very low rainy day fund for what our budget is. We should be actually in the neighborhood of about $1 million in rainy day, and we only have $335,000. So I just would not recommend going that direction.
So how do we build that up? I didn't see anything in there about setting any money aside.
We have no money to set aside right now.
If we pass a bond, we do.
Okay, so then we can actually do that. Then maybe if we are able to save some through attrition and other cost-saving measures, we might have some ability to do that.
But I don't think what we saw tonight was a comprehensive financial plan. It was different options, and then we got to build a financial comprehensive plan. I'm excited for the 22nd. I know that the administrators in the building, administrators have done a lot of work on the strategic plan, and I know that they've involved the community. So I'm personally excited to hear what they have to say and to start to mold all that together. And so I'd say we stay the course. From my perspective, we hear the strategic plan from each of the building administrators, and then our challenge is to again take that strategic plan, create a financial plan around it, and set aside rainy day funds. I mean, I think what we saw tonight is just a few options to get us there, and I don't think this is an all-inclusive options that we saw here. I mean, there could be a combination, or it could be...
Not at all, and that's why we threw them out, is just to give you some idea of what would happen with each one. So just kind of get a place to launch, but we are under a time crunch. If you decide to do an operating bond, then we under a time crunch, because where our one-time savings is going to run out is come next July. And that's where we're going to start hitting, it's going to start hitting us. And if we do a bond now, then we have money when that time comes. If we don't do it now and get it in before December, right? You can talk more on that.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna do a bond and want the monies before 2021, then we have to have all that sold. The bond has to be sold by the end of November, basically, kind of like we did the roof bond. So very similar timeline. I mean, there is...
Jeremy, just before you move on, so that has to be submitted by what date in order to have everything?
Well, you'd have to have a public hearing on the bond, and then all the paperwork, and has to be advertised, and you have advertising deadlines that you have to do throughout that whole process of the bond. So very similar to what we did when we did the roof bond a year ago. It's pretty much the same timeline, which we actually started about this time a year ago. And then that bond sold in November. But the part of it is, if you take the bond now, the monies prior to 2021, we have to include that in the 21 budget for debt service. The other option, there is another option, is you could take a bond next spring. You could take a bond next spring, but it wouldn't affect the tax rate until 22. So you can get the monies in the spring. The one thing with that, though, you'll pay more in interest, because you won't have a payment until 2022, so you have more months of build-up interest over the course of that bond, whatever that amount may be.
Dr. Grimo, how many more steps are left in the strategic plan? We don't have any debt service money falling off till 2023, is that correct?
Yeah, we have we'll have a little drop in '23, then it goes back up, and then it really will drop down more in '25.
So the strategic plan is looking 5 years down the road, is that correct?
No, not necessarily, because there's going to be some steps that we can take now. But if you're talking about renovations or adding onto a building or anything along those lines, you're still like a year and a half out even doing that by the time you do plans and all of that kind of stuff. So, I mean, at least in my experience, that's how long it's taken. So I fully anticipate us to be done with the strategic plan hopefully by December, but it really depends on how many meetings the board would like to have and, you know, because there is an involved process in that.
Okay. Jeremy just said that we can do a bond in the spring. Are we allowed to turn in a negative budget for 2021? Are we gonna be in the red?
Those monies, like we could get the bond and utilize those monies in '21. It just wouldn't affect the tax rate until 2022. Because if you do the bond, obviously that affects tax rate. So it wouldn't be on the 21 tax rate, but it would be on the 22. The caveat is you just pay more interest over the time of that bond, depending how many years, whatever how many years you take that bond. So, but it is another option if you were wanting to wait and kind of see where things shook out after the first of the year. We could do a bond in the spring and have those monies, and then it wouldn't affect the tax rate though until 22. We'd build it into the 22 budget for that tax rate.
But when do you need it?
Jeremy?
When do you need the money?
Well, before we would run out of it. I mean, I would say, you know, you're looking at June of next year where we would start to get probably strapped, you know, if we're not able to do some other savings and if enrollment doesn't go up in February and some of those things. So, yeah, I mean, there's just so many unknowns to it.
But the $600-some thousand that we had in savings, you're saying that would offset the $600,000 shortfall until June, until the next calendar year or school calendar?
Yeah, I mean, that would help us get through to that point, yeah.
Okay. I've heard a lot of conversation here tonight and a lot of good ideas, and I'm gonna throw this one out there, and I'm telling you right now, I'm getting ready to throw you a curveball. And I already talked to Dr. Gramo about this, and she looked at me like I was crazy. But I've heard talk about advertising and billboards. You know what? If we're doing it the best right here, I don't think we need to do that. That's just personal opinion. So what about if we postpone this until June, and let's do $1.5 million and fix everything? Let's hire a mental health professional. Let's make the digital learning coordinator and the CNA permanent positions. Let's bring back some RIF teachers in the areas where we need them. Now, we can't do status quo because I don't think in the foreseeable future we're going to stop a 40-year history. But instead of putting a Band-Aid on something that needs stitches, let's fix it. If we're going to go to the public and raise their taxes, if we're going to raise them 7 cents, let's raise it 15 cents and fix the problem and make everything the best. To my knowledge, there's not another school in Wabash County that's got a mental health professional. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. You know, we got a counselor out here that's trying to take care of 500 kids. I don't think I can do it. So I'm just, you know, and I know I sound like I'm angry, and I'm not. I'm just frustrated at the way education works. You know, who, what, why, where, and when. Let's fix it. We got the ability to raise taxes. That doesn't mean we should. But if we need to, let's do it. But let's not put a Band-Aid when we need stitches. Let's fix it. So there's that one for you to sleep on tonight.
I guess I'm a little confused. I thought a bond was like basically you're borrowing money. So if you borrow $1.5 million and add all those positions,
It's a tax rate. It's a tax rate increase for an X amount of years. It's not like you're really.
so you're just going to keep that forever in order to pay for
No,
the
you'd have to put
positions?
an end on it. I would, if we're gonna borrow $1.5 million so we don't crush people, I'd say do it for, I don't know, ask Mr. Flack, 3 years or 5 years. He's been through it before, you know, and then when the debt service comes off, if you wanna look at it, Ruth, if you wanna look at it, Ruth, like a loan, let's say when the debt service comes off, instead of raising it right back up to where it was, we hold back that spending just a little bit and kind of pay them back.
But doesn't student enrollment really make a difference on how much money we have? Like
For a bond?
no, to sustain. I don't understand how it would be sustained. Mr. Turflinger, what you just described, could you explain to me how that's sustained? To get a bond in order to add positions and then to sustain those positions over time?
We couldn't sustain that once that bond ran out or however many years. We figured that we'd have to
The goal
change.
being if you do the $1.5 million bond instead of 600,000, in 3 to 5 years, maybe we fix some of the things and maybe we're the absolute best school district around. And all those kids that left that were on the borders, they come back.
Well,
That's how we maintain at that point.
my only concern with doing something long-term like that is we only have so much capacity for bonds and leases and all of that. And if we go and we spread this out for 5 years, then we're looking at even pushing our building projects even further down the road unless you're looking at a referendum or something along those lines, which was what we were trying to keep from doing. We would like to be able to get to a point where we keep that tax level at the same, and we do projects every 3 years or so, based on what our needs are, and look at it like that. And that could be more along the lines that we do something along like that, as opposed to, I'm not sure if we do a 1.5 million and we put in all those positions, well, I don't know that we can sustain those long-term. And we might be right back where we started.
Well, it's like Mr. Hensley said, you're making an investment in trying to grow the district.
I agree.
You know, and if you gotta postpone building brick and mortar, I guess I'm okay with that, because if our numbers keep declining, why do we wanna build something and then watch another district walk in and give us a quarter on the dollar to take over in consolidation? We either invest now and do it better than everybody else, or fold your tent and go home.
Just give me some money, send me to the blue chip, right? I mean, that's one thing where, you know, you look at this whole situation, I just see poker written all over it, right? You got 3 school corporations in the county, consolidation's on the table, we're sitting here waiting, which one goes out first, so we're at the victory table, you know, 1 or 2 of them. You guys are talking about, you know, we're gambling here, right, with taxpayer money, basically. What are you doing with this money is what I want to know. Dave, you're kind of saying, okay, we're going to spend $1 million, let's go $1.5 million, let's go all in. You know, what I want to see, the first thing we need to do is see a plan. And that's kind of, for months now, you know, it's kind of hard to do anything without a vision and a plan. And so I say we wait, we see what the strategic plan is, we develop a financial plan off of that, and then we assess where we want to go with this. But I'm not rushing into any debt, I can tell you that right now. So if we can wait, we can wait. And maybe it's time to tighten the buckle. And again, I hope you guys are working with MTA on some type of capacity demand plan, because when I see those numbers inverted up there, where the classes are going smaller, right, that's kind of the wrong way. So we ought to have a good understanding of exactly what personnel we need each year before that year happens, and what classrooms are going in. Again, that's a simple capacity demand plan. You know, I love how kind of RIF always happens, right? But if we're going to RIF, I want some explanation about why, what positions we're going to RIF, where the demand's going. You know, I'm just, you guys are out here, I get the feeling you guys are shooting in the dark, you know, and I'm not talking you guys, I'm talking every one of us. You know, this is $1 million is a lot of money, and it may not be to a school budget, and it's not that big of a tax rate increase, and I'm not too sure You know, I know where you're going, Dave. Why didn't we do an operating referendum and give the community the voice? I remember when we were going through the whole referendum, and there were people in the community that said they'll step up and pay more in taxes. You know, so at points, I don't understand how we go along and then all of a sudden we run into these blips and then we're gonna take immediate action. I do like what you're doing. It's a lot better than the last time, right? Because we're not really shooting, you know, at that 30% reduction or something. I think this is a realistic assessment that we have here. We just need to figure a course going forward, you know? But I think everybody's kind of throwing things out here where I'm not ready to, you know, this isn't gambling to me, you know? And I was joking about the blue chip, right? But I mean, that's what I'm hearing here. And again, you know, if we're gonna go out and take money, I wanna kind of know where it's invested at. We need fundamental business tools in schools, you know? It amazes me how this whole thing operates, you know, we give our property tax to the state. I'm not sure why that ever happened, you know? But then we get a certain amount back. Somebody accrues interest that would be nice for the communities to have. You got school corporations, you know, take Southeast Hamilton, they got a $150 million budget, we got a 15 or less than a $15 million budget. You know, are kids in different areas, is it equitable? I mean, the whole way that these schools are ran, it just boggles, you know, is it really equitable the way funds are shared through the state? And I know we're not gonna solve that, but that's some of the conversations that need to be had in education on funding. You know, I don't know that the model's even correct. But one thing is, if we're gonna go in debt, I wanna know what we're gonna do with that money. You know, I'm ready to go home, so.
I'm wondering,
Can I say-
Mr. Esposito, I just wondered if you had anything to say. I've heard you ask, I think, one question, but I've really not heard any of your thoughts.
Well, generally, I'm not certain of everything. I can be confident on some stuff, but not certain of many things. And I think that leaves me better to listen because I'm willing to adjust. But I think we could wrap this up, in my opinion, in a couple different ways. One, I'm not going to ask for a sneak peek into the strategic plan, but it sounds like a lot of the conversation, some of the ideas we may have heard tonight may show up in that strategic plan. So I think we're wise to wait to see, because I know there's been a lot of work put into that before we make any other decisions. And then finally, what is the next step, Dr. Grumeau? What do you need from us on the 22nd? Like, how do we tighten it up, or what should I come prepared for on the 22nd?
Really what we need, and really the biggest reason we're bringing this to you is we brought it each to you individually to let you know where we're at, to let you know that we are going to be struggling by the end of June. And we wanted to be able to give you some options to think about. So if you decided you did want to go ahead and do an operating bond so we're in good shape and we can keep moving forward with our strategic plan, we can go back and market, we can do a lot of things like that. Keep our programming, that's my concern. Come June, we're going to start having to cut programs. We're going to have to start cutting teachers. We're going to have to look at ECA positions. If the money's not there, we don't really have any other options. We've cut a lot as far as utility costs. You can see we've saved, I think it was about $80,000 because of a lot of things that we put in place. Are there more things that we can do? Yes, but we have to have a direction. If you do want to do an operating bond, we really need to know by the next board meeting if we want to have it in place by the June. And so we wouldn't have to cut any of those positions. We wouldn't have to go down that road. We might still have to cut some just because of the number of students that we have lost. But we wouldn't necessarily have to go as extensive as what we may have to go.
And Jeremy, you'll come back with a different or more concise tax rate.
Yeah, once Baker Tilly gets back to me with those specific rates, what it would look like. I asked them to do a 1, 2, and a 3 year, at least on those amounts.
I mean, I can ask you this individually, but I need like layman's terms. Dave, you alarmed me a little bit, maybe it's real, but you ranged it from 70 to 700 to $70,000, depending on the property you own. So that type of information, and you and I can get
That's not
together.
this time, this $1 million, that's what they're already paying with the increase.
Oh, I thought you said just,
No,
if we do this and
no,
somebody's
we're
$70,000.
We're talking, what, a
a year.
nickel, Jeremy, per $100?
Yeah, it'll just depend on the number of years we would go out with it. It could be anywhere from, 10 cents to 2 cents. It just depends on the amount and then how far out we would want to go with it.
Yeah, I didn't mean to confuse anybody. I was talking about the whole, if you have a $150,000 house. Now, here's the question I got. And I guess I got conflicting.
Can we wait? I just want to make sure that Mr. Esposit's question was answered, because you just wasn't answered, because I thought you were in the middle of it.
I think so. I think we have 2 weeks and I can individually communicate.
Right. I'd encourage you to give us a call, come in, whatever you need to do, and to get your questions answered, to feel informed about making a decision.
Yeah.
And Dr. Grimeau, you said we need to make a decision at the next board meeting. Are you referring to September 22nd or the October regular meeting?
If you do want to do a bond, we just have to know that. Otherwise, we can go with option 1, option 2, anything else that, is suggested. But we just know that if we're under a time crunch to do an
But it's
operating
September
bond,
22nd?
yes.
Okay. And that meeting will be one that we can vote on, so it would be suggested that we give direction at the beginning of that meeting.
Somebody needed to explain the time crunch to me, Ruth. We just got done hearing that we could wait till spring to do a bond, and now all of a sudden we got 2 weeks to do this. We got 8 months to make a plan before June, and we could still, the RIFs don't have to be done till July 1, so we could be working on a plan, putting whoever together and doing this. Again, this looks real reactionary to me. I don't like making decisions this fast. We haven't seen the strategic plan. We don't have a financial plan. I don't get the rush to do this at the next board meeting when, we may end up giving you more if we come up with a good plan. I don't get, somebody explain to me why the rush for the 22nd.
We're just saying that if we wanted in this year's budget and start getting them money in January, we have to have it by the 22nd to make that happen.
Okay.
If you choose to wait and do it, you said next spring, it will cost us more money in the long run. I don't know when we would get the money. It probably just depends on when we start the process, correct? And so usually figure 3 months usually after you start that process to be able to see any of that money.
And so then we would also be looking at having to cut some programs
Yeah, we're looking at, we've got to start making some cuts somewhere. And who knows, maybe that Magic Student Ferry will come down in February and bless us with our 100 kids back, and that could change, everything, but we don't know that at this point. And I prefer to not wait till July to do any RIFs, and I can probably guess MTA is going to agree with me that I, as a teacher, would not want to wait till July. I would want to know in March, so that in April and May I can start the job search when all the new jobs are posted. So I'm just out of courtesy for the teachers, I would prefer to start looking at that by March. If you guys feel differently, please feel free to tell me.
So, I want to take a chance to look ignorant here, but I need to. So we have to put the bond in to get money in January, but if we put the bond in, say, in January or February, why would it cost us more money if we just got the money in May?
You have to have the bond sold and would deliver before January, if we wanted the money before January 1st, 2021. So we would have to have that wrapped up, all the meetings and everything we would have to do like we did for the roof by the end of November.
But what if we don't want the money till March? I mean, why would it cost us?
Because it has to be built into the 21 budget for the debt service and the tax rate.
Okay.
If you wait and say, we'll wait until March to take out the bond, which we can do that, but the rate will not go, the tax rate change would not happen until the 22 budget, which means our first payment would happen in June of 22, which means you get the money in March, you have more months where you've got interest building until your first payment. That's where you pay more in interest. And hopefully that's how Baker Tilly explained it to me.
Any idea what kind of interest rate we'd be looking at?
When I talked to them last week, they said they had just done a $700,000 bond over 20 years, a really long period, and it was 2%. They felt that we would probably get around a 1% at this point. So, but like I said, once they get me some more definite tax impact on those bonds, I'll pass that on, because that will give us some better direction as well.
Anybody else have anything to add to the discussion?
I'm good, thanks.
No, I'd be an auctioneer, I said sold.
Are there any patron comments?
I just wondered, Jeremy, what is the total expenditure on electricity per month, roughly? Do you have an estimate?
I don't off the top of my head, but I could get that to you if you wanted to drop me an email.
That's okay. So what I thought was a way that the corporation could save some dollars, just like the Church of the Brethren did with the solar panels. I don't know if it's ever been investigated or talked about before, but it has? Okay, so solar panels are an awesome investment. You can also get donations from corporations and from individuals to help pay for that. And especially during the summer, those will rack up a lot of credits with Duke Energy. So a potential really good savings to possibly look at to help with energy costs. So, thank you.
Would you mind stating your name just so that we can have it for the record?
I'm Robert Bucher.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other patron comments? Superintendent comments?
Well, somebody stole my thunder earlier, but September 22nd, we are rolling out the plans for each of the school buildings for our strategic plan recommendations. We will be taking community input that evening, so we would love for you to invite your friends and bring everybody in, and we'll give you a chance to do that and give us some feedback on that. Also, just wanted to say another thank you for those donors that have given during our COVID times, because I know it's not easy on everybody, and we just appreciate everybody continuing to support us. Thank you so much. That's it.
Are there any school board comments?
I'd like to just echo what Dr. Grimald's talked about earlier with the athletic department and the thanks that she gave to the athletic department. I think they've done a phenomenal job. I'd like to thank Randy for the YouTube. I know that we had an athlete from Culver Academy whose parents were able to watch from Alabama, and I know at least one runner who had sisters watching from Alaska, Detroit, and Utah, and so I just very much appreciate that. But equally, I wanted to thank the administrators and the teachers for the phenomenal job of bringing the students back safely. I know our teachers are now janitors also, and they just have taken on a lot more responsibility, and I just think it's an incredible thing what you guys have accomplished. I don't know that there's anybody in the community, if we were playing poker, that would have put our chips all in to still be in school at this point without some sort of a 2-week recess. And I think Steve was absolutely right. We don't talk about the great things that go on here as much as we should. And I think, you know, I just want to thank you guys for the phenomenal job that you've done, and I have no doubt that you'll continue to do a phenomenal job, and we will do our best to give you the resources to continue to do that. So thank you very much.
Jeremy, Dr. Ramon, Ruth, I believe Mr. Espacet, Becky Landis and her staff. We may have covered this already, and if we did, I apologize, but they kept a whole lot of kids fed from March until June, I guess it was, whenever. And I know I appreciate it because along with the rest of the people sitting in this room, we only got to see a fraction of what it took to pull that off. And just our community came together, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
I sat and listened to an hour-long discussion just a little bit ago, and I had some things to say, and I didn't say them because I'm a little fearful that my words are going to be twisted. But as an educator, and I know that I sit here as a school board president, but the hat I wear is a public educator, and I've done that for a long time. I have to say that the discussion was disheartening to me as an educator. I heard a lot of complaining about schools not running as businesses. And a school is not a business, and it is a business at the same time. We don't have money to pay for programs, coaches, the extra courses that Mrs. Leifer is teaching. There's not money there. And to sit and complain about it being because of the way that we run a school, or to say that we're not being informed ahead of time, like we have 2 weeks to process it. To me, that is a lot of time being informed. And I guess I was, I never really understood why a board of lay people tell professionals what to do. And I value community input, and sitting on this board, I've realized like it is really great to have all these different perspectives. And at the same time, it's really great to have professionals who have been through it before, who understand school finance. I don't understand school finance as much as they do. Just like I don't understand curriculum like a principal does, or a curriculum director. So while it's great to want to reach out and hear what other people have to say, we're charged with making a decision, and we have more information than other people do.
So I don't, it's really frustrating to me to continue to sit in a board meeting and feel like the professionals that we've hired to bring wisdom and guidance to our school continue to be questioned. And I'm just going to stop because I know that I've said enough now that my words can be bullied, can be twisted, I can be bullied, people can say whatever they want to say in all kinds of different forums. But if you know my heart, then you know that I'm sitting on this board because I care about kids. And when I hear that we don't have money to meet the needs, and if we don't get that money, then we need to begin making pretty tough decisions that are riffing people. And yeah, like the deadline is July 1, but those decisions have to be made early. And so I just, I think like the role of a board is really about listening to the direction that we have. And so I just want you to know that I'm behind you, I'm listening, and what you say and what you recommend, I take that to heart because I feel like you have a way bigger understanding of the picture than I do. So I hope that my heart isn't misconstrued too much in that. We're adjourned. Thank you for your time tonight. There's lots of papers